D. Mace Finken and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are proudly presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, David Janes here with you. Willie Donick out for the next couple of days. He's shipping up to Boston to be there for his daughter Evie's college graduation from Northeastern University. Proud Papa Willie Donick. So congratulations, Donick family. We'll keep his seat warm for him while he's gone. But Derek, both of your children have graduated from college, yes?
Yes, both of them have.
It's a proud day for a parent when your child graduates from college.
Oh man, I think you as a parent feel more joy and excitement, and all those other feelings, and the kid feels like, I'm glad I'm done. That's my son, because my daughter graduated during the COVID years. So her graduation, we did it from a hotel in New York on a computer, which was just awful. And I feel for those kids who had to graduate during that time, whether it be high school or college. But my son's graduation, oh man, I was so excited. His mom was too. His sister, absolutely. We were just all so excited, and he could have been somewhere else. He would have rather been somewhere else. He didn't. He even told me, well, we were talking about this the other day. He even told me, like, Dad, I shouldn't even went to the graduation. And I'm like, dude, I had to explain to him why. And I broke it down for him. I said, maybe I went a little bit too deep for him in a sense, but he can handle it. I said, listen, you went to one of these best schools in the country, in Boston University. You graduated with honors. You are a young Black man. Not many that look like you get an opportunity to do that. So it's not just about you, it's about us as parents and your sister being so proud, and you being able to do something that a lot of other people can't do or want to do, but they don't have the funds to do it. And that's to go to a prestigious college and graduate with honors. So he got it. I think it sunk in. But yeah, I mean, Willie's gonna have I imagine Aaron will cry at least 10 times off and on.
I believe the ceremony is tomorrow.
Yes, at least. And that's probably before they get to the graduation.
All right. We will check in with Willie on Thursday, and we will find out exactly how many times his wife cried at their daughter's graduation. But congratulations to the Donick family. We have a lot to get to today. Tim Hasselbeck will join us at 11:30. Teron Davenport will join us at 1 o'clock. We had to bump Teron yesterday because Barry Trotz spoke for more than an hour. And we will get to Barry Trotz in the second hour.
Filibuster.
Yes.
Pray it.
Absolutely. But last night, if things weren't bad enough for the Nashville Predators, last night they got a little bit worse at the NHL Draft Lottery. The worst case scenario played out for the Nashville Predators. They had the third best odds, 11.5%, of winning the lottery and picking number one overall. Instead, they moved down 2 spots. So the Predators will be picking 5th overall in the NHL draft next month. The New York Islanders, who had a 3.5% chance of winning the lottery, moved up, I believe, from the 10th spot to the number 1 spot. The Utah Hockey Club jumped up from 14th to 4th, which dropped the Predators down to 5th. So the Predators, they're still going to get a good player. This is the first time they're going to be picking in the top 5 in more than 10 years. But whenever something bad happens in Nashville sports, I just go to Twitter and I type in Stillman. And I went to @Jared Stillman, and Jared was tweeting through it last night. He even said so on the air that yesterday was Black Monday for the Nashville Predators because Andrew Brunette returns as coach, and the Predators' worst case scenario unfolded in the draft lottery. So, Predators fans, last night was the cherry on top of a poop Sunday, which was the 2024-2025 NHL
Oh,
season.
wow.
And I'm sorry.
Wow. I mean,
I'm not laughing at your pain. I just sometimes when I'm in uncomfortable situations, my natural reaction is to laugh because I don't know how else to react. So I'm not laughing at your pain. I'm just like, man, we were hoping for a bright spot to end this terrible, terrible season, and it did not happen last night.
Jared will find himself seeing his primary more times than not, because he's going to get himself all worked up over everything that goes on here in Nashville from a sports standpoint. He's going to work himself up. So he's going to find himself at his primary more times than not. You know what the primary is going to tell him, as he's going to tell him each time? Listen, you need to stop stressing out about the sports, man. Calm down. Put the Twitter down.
Let's do a dramatic reading of some of Jared's tweets from last night, and I'm going to clean them up because there are some naughty words in here, Jared.
Come on, you got kids now, Jared. You got kids. Excuse me.
Here's one.
Twitter's a kids program.
Exactly.
And I quote, F the lottery, except it doesn't say F, it says the whole word.
Uh-huh.
F the lottery, that horrendous, awful season for nothing. A little bit later, the Preds are effed. Again, the full word, not what I said. That godforsaken season for nothing. Awful draft pick. The coach who lost the room comes back. Awful. So I can't wait to hear what Jared has to say.
But is it
closer to 2 o'clock?
Is it the Predators' fault that they got the 5th pick of the draft?
No, it's a lottery.
It's a lottery.
And it was hypnotizing last night. At one point, I think they went to commercial, and in the picture-in-picture, they had the lottery machine with the little balls fumbling around in there, and it was hypnotizing. I was just like, look at the pretty ball. Look at the pretty balls over there.
Did you pick out the Predator balls?
They had the NHL released a spreadsheet basically of all of the combinations that could possibly come up and which team corresponds with each combination. So I looked at that a little bit, but it was just a lot of numbers.
Okay.
But it was hypnotizing. But yes, the worst case scenario. And look, I am not going to pretend to know about any of these prospects, okay? I have not watched any of these prospects play a single shift of hockey. I read a lot about what the prospect draft analysts say, and I trust them. The same way during the NFL draft, we read what Mel Kiper has to say, and Matt Miller, and Field Yates, and Daniel Jeremiah, and Peter Schrager, and all of these people who do mock drafts and such. I read those for the NHL draft analysts. And I read 2 mock drafts last night after the draft lottery, one from Sportsnet and one from The Athletic. And both drafts had the Predators taking James Higgins, the center out of Boston College, with the 5th overall pick. Again, I have never watched James Higgins play hockey, so I am not going to sit here and analyze his game and how it would fit with the Nashville Predators. But I know last night's result was terrible. Again, the cherry on top of a poop Sunday that was this 2024-2025 Nashville Predators season, on top of the terrible football season that you had to watch as well. But I don't think the Predators picking 5th overall is necessarily a death sentence.
No, they're still going to get a good player.
Now, is he going to be the top player, the game-changing franchise player that the Predators so desperately need? I can't tell you that one way or another.
It depends on how close are these, people would consider top tier talents that are coming out this year. Of the top 5 who they predict are going to be drafted, what is the difference? I know you got top forward. He'll probably end up getting, was it Schaefer end up getting drafted first?
So the defenseman, Matthew Schaefer,
yes.
I would guess that the Islanders will take him at number 1 overall.
Exactly. So then after that, you got some centermen. So how closely, if you were just picking the best player, how closely are those 5 guys comparable?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, because unlike the NFL draft and the lead up to the NFL draft, you can easily watch Cam Ward play at Miami.
Yeah.
You can easily watch Abdul Carter play at Penn State or Travis Hunter play at Colorado, but it's not easy to find OHL games so that you can watch some of these prospects. So again, I don't know how much better Michael Misa is than James Higgins or Porter Martone or all of these young 17, 18-year-old hockey players. But I just know that Predators fans, they were hoping for a little bit of hope last night after the Predators season was a complete disaster, and they did not get it, at least in terms of picking at the top of the draft. But we will pick up the Predators conversation in the second hour.
Mhm.
We will talk more about what we heard from Barry Trotz yesterday. But because we were focused yesterday, actually, let's read this one text on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHunted.com before we get to our next topic. Combine that, meaning the draft lottery, with that awful word salad from Barry Trotz, and it just seems worse than what it is. A normal day, not a bad day, but mixed with that presser from Trotz, you get these types of reactions. And that's probably true. Predators fans, they wanted a little sunshine on their rainy day yesterday, and they did not get it. They just got more rain. But we will pick up the Predators conversation in the second hour. So one thing we did not talk about yesterday as it relates to the Tennessee Titans is it sure seems, Derek, that Brian Callahan is stressing that there will be a quarterback competition of sorts at training camp. He has been careful, and the Titans have been careful, as Nick Suss writes in the Tennessean, not to anoint Ward a franchise savior since drafting him on April 24th. Even if the franchise unretired Hall of Fame quarterback Warren Moon's number for him to wear and turned down trade hauls, including multiple first-round picks, just to take him. But it is a bit of a contrast from last year, when Callahan was quick to name Will Levis the starter, and at every turn seemed to support Will Levis. I remember, I think it was after the Miami game, where Will Levis injured his shoulder. Mason Rudolph comes in. They win that game. I mean, they were playing against Tyler Huntley on the other side. They should have won. Tim Boyle could have won that game, I would hope. But right after that game, Brian Callahan said, if Will is healthy, he's our starting quarterback. There was no such questions last year. But it does seem like Brian Callahan, I should say, is stressing that there is a quarterback competition. And David, if you will, this was Brian Callahan last week asked about Will Levis and if he has spoken to Will Levis since the team drafted Cam Ward.
Have you talked with Will since the draft, and are you concerned at all about any awkwardness in the room?
No. I think, my conversation with Will when he left was the same, and we came back was the same. There was no, you don't have to make any crazy conversations. And I think Will's done a really good job of focusing on what he can improve at. And I'm excited to see what that looks like for him, the work he's put in. That's Will's always worked. There's nothing about that. That's always been something he's done. And I think he had a very clear path and what he wanted to accomplish this offseason. And he just spent the time worrying about him. And at the quarterback position in general, that's all you can control. You don't control whether receivers get open. You don't control whether linemen make their blocks, and I think for him, just narrowing his focus on what he can get better at. And I think he's done a good job of that. And I think competition is good for everybody. Competition is good for young players. It's good for veteran players. It keeps their edge. So having guys that can play and compete, I think is a good thing for our football team. It's going to make us better from top to bottom. It'll make those individuals better too, just because they're going to have to come in and perform. And there's always somebody else that's there that could possibly perform better. And I think that's how you get the best out of each position group and ultimately your team.
So following that question and answer, another question was asked, this was last week, about how Brian Callahan intends to divide quarterback reps. This is what Brian Callahan said.
Specifically with that position, how do you plan to divide or handle reps during OTAs, during minicamp? And is there going to be a first-team guy at quarterback?
Yeah, well, they'll have plenty of opportunities. How those reps get shaken out will sort of be determined by how they perform when given opportunities. That part of it's been thought out. We have a plan in place, and what that looks like is going to ultimately be sort of up to them, and how their performance goes when there's time to perform. So feel good about the process and the plan in place, and there's going to be plenty of reps for those guys to compete and get better and improve and be ready to play in September. So starting off early on here is baby steps to some degree.
Okay, Derek, here's my question for you. And we touched on this a little bit last week, but I want to dig into it a little bit more today. Why are we doing this? We all know, right, that Cam Ward is going to be starting for the Tennessee Titans in week 1. And I understand, as I said earlier, that the Titans do not want to anoint Cam Ward as the franchise savior. But I feel like, and I think this was the term that Robbie Stanley used on the morning show the other day, it feels like a dog and pony show for Brian Callahan to say, well, it's going to be a competition. And we're going to, and the reps are going to be determined by how well these players perform. In what world is Cam Ward not getting the most reps? In what world is Cam Ward not starting for this team in week 1? So why is Brian Callahan going through all of this trouble when it seems inevitable that Cam Ward is ultimately going to win the job?
I mean, it's just the I want to say formality in a sense, or theatrics. You want there to be a sense of earned and not given, even though everybody in that building, everybody that was involved with that draft, Cam Ward, the team, period, the players, they expect him to be the starter day one. You are drafting a guy, number 1 overall above anyone else. And then come up on the season. I mean, listen, it wouldn't be the worst thing, but just think of the optics here. People already don't trust the Titans in their front office. People already thought they should have traded out of the pick because they didn't believe Cam Ward was worthy of the number 1 pick. So you have that. Then you have other stuff going on. It's like y'all hadn't developed a quarterback. So, I mean, if he doesn't start, if he isn't a day 1 starter, all of those things are going to start resurfacing once again. And the fan base will not trust the Tennessee Titans in their development of a quarterback if he's not starting day 1. Again, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. It would just mean, hey, listen, he has a little ways to go. He'll be all right, but he has a little ways to go. You know, we want to start off with a veteran guy and let him see the game from afar. And then if we got to put him in, we'll put him in. But make no mistake, everybody in that building expects him to be the day 1 starter. If you don't, why are you drafting him number 1? And he will get the bulk of the reps. I know it'll start off as Will Levis getting more reps at first. It will start off like that, but in training camp, mini camps. But when they start coming back for the training camps, the big camps, it's going to be Ward getting the majority of the snaps, because if you don't give him the snaps, you don't know if he can play the game, and you're not allowing him to develop as a player. So under no circumstances will he not be getting majority of the reps.
So I don't know if disingenuous is the right word, because I don't think that Brian,
they're just trying to taper it. That's
right.
all.
I don't think Brian Callahan is a bold-faced liar in this situation. It just seems like save yourself the trouble of trying to pretend that this is going to be a competition. And I think you explained it well last week when we talked about this, about the competition for Cam Ward not being against the other quarterbacks. I think you said it was against time.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it's basically how much time between when you first set foot and they give you that playbook, how much time between that and day 1, first game of the season, how much time is that? That's what you're competing with. You're not competing with Brandon Allen. You're not competing with Will Levis. You're not competing with, what's the other quarterback?
Tim Boyle, Brandon
Allen. I was
Allen.
about to say Foyle.
Yep.
Boyle, Tim Boyle. You're not competing with those dudes. You are competing with the next 3 to 4 months. That's what you're competing with. And how quickly can we get you to a point where you, not us, you feel comfortable as a starter? Because when you feel comfortable with this offense, we feel comfortable in giving you the plays and opening up the playbook. That's what I mean by this is not each one. Let me go. I'm glad I have this. Let me put on my glasses because I can't see.
Now it's serious.
Yeah. It's getting real heated up in here. It's really okay. We had a firsthand example last year. The Chicago Bears drafted Justin Fields 4 years ago, and they got rid of him because they drafted Caleb Williams. It wasn't going to be no competition between those two. Bryce Young, it wasn't no competition between he and the backup guy. There wasn't. Now he ended up, getting benched, but there was no competition. Even CJ Stroud, there was no competition. He was the guy, and he was the second pick in the draft. You go down to Trevor Lawrence. Was there any competition for Trevor Lawrence? No. Was there any competition for Joe Burrow? No. So Baker Mayfield, was there any competition? So when you're drafting a guy number 1 overall, you expect him to come in here and start. So what you're competing with is the time that I hand you this playbook or the time that we draft you until the opening day of the 2025 season. That's what you and we are competing with.
Which we will find out soon enough, because I believe the schedule announcement is next Wednesday, which I always find to be quite fascinating with the NFL, because we already know who the Titans are playing, but we get to find out when and what time and what day. I always find the NFL schedule
Oh, I got a
revealed.
good over-under on that one.
Oh, you do? What's that?
How many times will the Titans be on national TV, because they got the number 1 pick now?
Mhm.
That's why I'm saying it. Over under.
So Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, or Thursday Night Football?
Okay? They'll get a Thursday night. They'll give them a Thursday night.
They're guaranteed
Yeah,
a Thursday
guaranteed
night.
a Thursday night. They may get a Monday night. Let's just throw that one in. Sunday, I don't know, because that's like Monday and Sunday is huge. I think Sunday is bigger now.
Here's my quick prediction. I think the Titans
Over under 2.5. Over under 2.5.
I will say over.
Okay.
I say they appear on Thursday Night Football twice, and they get that random doubleheader Monday Night Football game that nobody cares about, like the Dolphins game last year.
But you don't believe they'll get a Sunday night game?
No.
Okay.
No.
And that'd be the early Monday. That'd be the early Monday night game.
Well, I can't recall who played at the same time as the Titans last
It was
year.
the Rams, because it had to be a West Coast game.
Right.
So it was the LA Rams or the Vegas Raiders playing somebody. And the Titans played before. The Titans started at like 6 o'clock. I think the game was like 6, somewhere around there.
I'm going to find this out. But that's my prediction, that the Titans will have 2 Thursday night games and the doubleheader Monday Night Football game. So it doesn't really count as a Monday. So maybe that is 2.5. If you count that Monday Night Football game as a half,
so
maybe it is 2.5.
So here's the question. If we could put this out, David, whenever you get a minute, if you can. The question is, how many national televised games will the Tennessee Titans have in the 2025 NFL season?
Yes.
Over or under? Should I make it 3?
You said 2. Let's go 2.5.
2.5.
2.5.
Let's go
Okay,
2.5. So I will say over. I say 3. My prediction is 2 Thursday night games and a Monday Night Football doubleheader early in the season. That is my prediction.
Okay.
You can let us know about that as well at 615-737-1025. But going back to our original conversation, I just think it's just a waste of time for Brian Callahan to pretend that Cam Ward's not going to be starting week 1. And we'll talk about that with Tim Hasselbeck, because he will join us coming up next. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Nashville Sounds take on my Norfolk Tides. I was raised in that area. Pre-game begins at 6:20 p.m. and the first pitch is at 6:35. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan is presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. D. Mace Vingan and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst. Hello, Tim. How are you?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
We are doing quite well. We are talking about Brian Callahan and how he seems to be stressing that there will be a quarterback competition this offseason leading into the regular season. He's talked about how reps are going to be distributed, all of those sorts of things. And the question I just had for Derek is, why are we putting ourselves through this? We know that Cam Ward, more than likely, is going to be taking the starting reps. He's going to be the starting quarterback for this team in week 1 against whichever opponent it is. So why do you think Brian Callahan and the organization are stressing that we're not just going to hand Cam the number 1 job, even though it ultimately seems like that's where it's going?
Yeah, I think, sometimes when a coach talks, say like, okay, is he giving us an honest answer, or is he sending a message to players on his team? Like, to me, I feel like, when coaches do what Brian Callahan is doing right now, it's, hey, I'm answering your question, appreciate you asking, but really what I'm doing is I'm sending a message to Cam and the rest of the team. Like, look, we're just going to hand this to you. I'm also sending a message to, Will Levis and all the other quarterbacks in that, like, hey, what you're working hard for right now and the opportunity that may be out in front of you, like, I'm not squashing that right now. I'm giving you hope as we sit here in early May. And while that, I'm talking about the quarterback position specifically, I want everybody to know that that same thing could be happening at linebacker and guard and safety. And so, I think that's what it is. Look, we all know, they know Cam Ward's going to be the future, the future of the coaching staff, here in Tennessee is directly tied to Cam Ward playing, his success. And so with that being the case, like, everyone knows it, but at the same time, like, the messaging I still think is important to the football team.
So last week, Warren Moon was at the Kentucky Derby, and he did an interview with Kay Adams. And of course, Warren Moon gave Cam Ward his blessing to wear his number 1 for the Tennessee Titans. And in this interview, he said to Kay Adams, quote, "I'm going to be a lot more involved than you think," when he was asked about his investment in Cam Ward in the Titans. And Willie, Derek, and I were talking about, the pros and cons of Warren Moon being involved, having that investment in Cam Ward, because he has not explicitly said what that's going to be. But how beneficial could it be for Cam Ward to have someone like Warren Moon in his corner, maybe as a sounding board? But the other half of that is there any sort of trepidation from the Titans that, what if we're telling Cam Ward one thing and the advice that Warren Moon is giving Cam Ward says another?
Yeah, I would say this, like, in terms of any type of mentorship, and I'll kind of put it this way too. I think that Warren Moon and my brother's time in Seattle, I think that Warren Moon was a nice resource for my brother and was a good encouragement to my brother, in his time as the Seattle Seahawks quarterback. Warren was, I believe, up there still doing radio, and, they definitely developed a friendship. And I think that it was definitely beneficial to Matthew, to have that relationship with Warren Moon. And so, where I think that these mentorships, can go sideways a little bit is if it's somebody that's just like only going to be publicly critical of the organization and defend, a player at all costs. Like, I don't think that ever really helps, the player, their development, and those types of things. I think that, if Warren Moon's desire is to, be there for Cam Ward and to, just be a resource if there are things that he's struggling with, then, then I think that that's good. I don't think that Warren Moon would be somebody that is giving competing advice to what the Titans would be saying to him. Like it's not going to be, hey, this is how you need to read this play out, or this is how you need to change your footwork, or like not stuff like that, but more, just, okay, we got this situation going on in the locker room, and this receiver's unhappy, and this is the stuff that he's saying, and how would you advise that I kind of massage that situation and make it better? Or, okay, you threw a pick, late in the game that, cost the team, the game. Like, how do you take the accountability for it, but also move on? Like, I think those are the areas where, someone like Warren Moon can be a huge asset to a young player.
We'll talk with Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst and head coach of the Ensworth Tigers. Now, Tim, yeah, you're right in regards to Warren Moon. That can be at times a tricky situation, but I think if everybody's on the same page, and it seems like, Warren Moon is not a guy that will overstep any boundaries. It's, hey, listen, if a kid comes to me, asks me some questions, or if I see something mechanical from his mechanics, or like you said, seeing things on the field, then I will mention it to him. But besides that, I'm not in here to be his coach. I'm just in here to be another ear for him to sort of, talk with in that regard. So looking at Cam Ward and the things that can help him, and we always look at, well, he needs a good offensive line. Well, we understand that. He needs some playmakers on the outside. Yeah, we get that too. But I think on the flip side, I think they need a defense that's going to allow the Titans to, bring Cam Ward on very slowly, because I looked at the last, 5-10 years of just the number one picks in the draft, and all but 2 were plus in turnover ratio. That was Baker Mayfield and Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams' season still was bad, and Baker Mayfield's season, I think they ended up going to the playoffs that first year, if I'm not mistaken. But how important is it for a number one pick in this situation, Cam Ward, to have a defense that's going to be in the better yet, not in the top half? It needs to be more like a top 12 defense.
Yeah, look, I think it's really important. I mean, we can talk about, I'll give you an example. I'm on NFL Live later today, and like, we were talking about the Chiefs and teams that need to keep pace with the Chiefs and all that. The Chiefs didn't have a very good offense last year. The Chiefs offensively weren't great, but what was great? Their defense, right? So we talk Patrick Mahomes all we want. Like, they had a really good defense. And I think that's part of, look, I as an analyst, I'm sure as fans, we do, we get so enamored with the offense and all that stuff, but defensively, like, it changes it a lot. Always have a good field position. Being able to get a 3 and out after a sudden change, or hold a team to 3 versus giving up a touchdown. So I think of teams like, go back to Roethlisberger as a very young player, like how good that defense was. You look at the difference of even an older player like Matthew Stafford, goes to the Rams, and they've got, a championship caliber defense. They win a Super Bowl. So, yeah, I think it's always important, but for sure, with a first-year starter, rookie quarterback with all kinds of expectations, that it isn't always about the offense having the ball last to score to win.
Now, Tim, quickly before we get you out of here, obviously these prank phone calls, and I don't think we talked with you about this, these prank phone calls that were happening. Obviously, it became so big because of Shedeur Sanders, but there were several other players in this year's draft that got fake, prank phone calls. Is there anything, one, that the league can do? And did they do enough to Atlanta to try to, curtail this just a little bit? Now, you can't control the fans. I understand that. But when it's coming out of one of the buildings, that's a different story.
Yeah. It seems to me like these numbers are way too accessible. I don't know how many phones they sent out and things like that, but like, to me, it seems like way too accessible to find some of these phone numbers to get it out. I would think the NFL will do something to change it. like it feels gross to me. Like as somebody who, had the phone ring, didn't get drafted, like it just is, look, it's a stressful day. I don't care if you're a first round draft pick, a seventh round draft pick, or you don't get drafted at all. It's kind of nasty to me. I mean, it really is. I get it. These guys are going to make a lot of money and there's a lot of reward in it. But I do feel like there should be, some other protection in terms of that stuff. And listen, maybe it's got to be, somebody else is answering the phone. Like I would hate to see a couple, people kind of just ruin the experience for, how this goes going forward. So yeah, it's not a good. Maybe we need to go back to landlines or something. I don't know. I just
give code names as you're doing
hey, listen, like it's all FaceTimes from now on.
That's
Yeah,
what
you're right.
that's
Yeah.
what I was
agree.
about to say. It needs to
Exactly,
be FaceTime or Zoom or something where you can clearly look at the other person
Exactly.
and know that it's not some 21-year-old kid impersonating Mickey Loomis calling Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah. It's really too bad. Listen, I don't have any wise words on it. I wish I did. It kind of stinks, I mean, it just, and you're right. Like D-Mace, the more we find out, like how many guys this has happened to, like this feels more like not just, one punk, kid, doing it. It's more, feels like an epidemic. There's so many guys that it's happened to.
Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, joining us as he does every Tuesday. Tim, great stuff as always. We'll talk next week.
All right. See you, fellas.
Tim Hasselbeck on the program. 615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on the quote-unquote competition that the Tennessee Titans are selling at quarterback, though I did appreciate Tim's analysis on that question. But we want to hear from you as well at 615-737-1025. Call us, text us. Nashville's best deal of the week is celebrating National Barbecue Month. Get a $50 gift card to Central Barbecue in Capitol View for half off right now. Try their new barbecue sampler, ribs, wings, and barbecue sliders. Go to theGameNashville.com/deals right now while supplies last.
They are not naming Cam Ward the starting quarterback right out of the box the way that they did last year when Brian Callahan was new with Will Levis. I think they want Cam Ward to be able to earn this and to be able to prove to his teammates who he is and what he is. And so, like, they feel like, okay, like a rookie coming in now, he's earned it the same way we've had to earn it. Totally understand that. But they are going to handle this, I think, in a way that will have Cam Ward ready to start. First, Brian Callahan has done his research on starting a rookie quarterback, and he went through it 5 years ago in Cincinnati. So he went back and looked at all of Joe Burrow's snaps from his rookie year in Cincinnati and went back to kind of give himself a refresher on the way that they deployed Joe Burrow, the way they protected Joe Burrow, the way they got the most out of Joe Burrow. And then Brian Callahan also went back and looked at all the snaps Jaden Daniels took last year in Washington. Of course, Jaden Daniels had a fantastic rookie year there, and he was a day one starter as well. So they're going to be prepared from that standpoint, that they'll have a plan that they've researched and looked into a lot. And then on top of that, I would expect that Cam Ward is going to get all the work that you would expect a starting quarterback to get. So they may not name him the starter. I would think he's going to take the first snap in OTAs. I would think he's going to take the first snap in veteran minicamp. And as he earns the job, they'll figure out a way to formally give it to him.
That was Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated talking about the Titans' plan for Cam Ward. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. We have one texter on our text line, Steve in Hermitage. Steve says, not disputing the Cam number one scenario, but is it just possible that the Titans are hoping another quarterback will perform well enough in camp to start a few games and let Cam observe to help his development? And I know this is something that Jared has stressed quite a bit about, the idea of sitting the quarterback. It does feel, Derek, that those days are, I feel like that's more of a relic of a bygone era. That isn't to say that there are quarterbacks that there aren't quarterbacks who do sit. Famously, Patrick Mahomes did not play right away. That's often referenced, especially with Mike Borgonzi being from Kansas City.
But they didn't need him to play right away.
Right. So remember, yesterday we did the project looking at the records of quarterbacks drafted number one overall in their rookie seasons. So since 1998, if I remember these numbers correctly off the top of my head, since 1998 with Peyton Manning, there have been 20 quarterbacks taken number one overall, excluding Cam Ward. So from Peyton Manning through Caleb Williams, there were 20. 17 of them started at least 5 games in their rookie seasons after being drafted number one overall. So it just seems like, although I understand the idea of having the rookie quarterback, I know Steve McNair also did not play right away. But to your point, Derek, the Titans drafted Cam Ward to help turn the franchise around. And by golly, that's what they're going to do. It would be different if the Titans had gone out and signed a veteran quarterback in free agency. If the Titans had signed Sam Darnold, or I know Geno Smith was traded. Let's say they trade for Geno Smith, or they sign Joe Flacco. You know, if like, it would have been different then because you have the veteran quarterback. But the Titans are not going to sit Cam Ward for Brandon Allen or Tim Boyle, who I believe combined have started fewer or maybe the same amount of games as Will Levis in the NFL. It's just not going to happen.
No, and listen, everybody points to, well, Kansas City didn't need to start him. Alex Smith had came off a season where he completed almost 70% of his passes. He threw for 3,500 yards and 15 touchdowns. Okay, I know that's not a lot, you know, in the big scheme of things, but he was more than an efficient passer. He did exactly what they wanted him to do, and that is to distribute the ball in this Andy Reid type of offense. So then you come back the next year, you draft a quarterback in mid-round, you move up to get him because you know eventually you want to segue out of Alex Smith. You didn't have to start him. Alex Smith came back with another really good season where he threw for over 4,000 yards, and that parlayed him to a huge contract with the then Washington Redskins, or the Washington wherever they were at
Football
the time.
team.
Yeah, football team. No, they were just still, yeah, they were not the football team just yet. So when people point to, oh, he didn't start his first game, well, he didn't have to. But look at the rest of them after that. They started. When you talk about number one picks, they all started. So it's easy to go back to Patrick Mahomes and say, well, he set a year. Well, he didn't have to sit. He didn't have to start. They weren't looking or clamoring for a savior. They had a guy that was running the offense efficiently. This is a different situation. Just like last year with the Chicago Bears, a different situation. Just like with the Jacksonville Jaguars, a different situation. Okay, so this situation that the Titans have is not like the Kansas City Chiefs. So let us not compare them to Kansas City. I know the best thing for a quarterback to do is probably sit and watch, but that was yesteryears.
By the way, Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle, by my quick math, have combined to start 15 games in the NFL. Will Levis has started 21 on his own. So I was right. That Boyle and Allen have started fewer combined games in the NFL than Will Levis. Total, they've started 36 games among the three of them.
Exactly. So my thing is that world that everybody want to live in, when you're drafted that high, you're not drafted to sit. I know it may sound nice and it may sound, I know what I'm really talking about here, but that's not reality. Every GM and every coach and every owner knows that. When you draft a guy number one or number two, if he's a quarterback, he ain't there to sit. No player, and I repeat, no player, when you draft them in that first 5 to 10, they expect you to sit and wait or develop and sit behind somebody. That's not the thought process. When I draft you that high, because what I am saying is, you out of 300 and something players, probably more than that are eligible for the draft, you are the top 10 best. And then I don't come in camp expecting you to start. Come on, in what world? It doesn't work anymore.
Skylar on our text line quickly says, people need to stop talking about Brian Callahan and Joe Burrow compared to Cam Ward. Joe Burrow is Joe freaking Burrow. He's a top 3 quarterback in the league. Cam Ward is not in the same category. I know that clip from Albert Breer, and we've heard this a lot with Brian Callahan, not just him speaking about it, but others speaking about it. His experience with Joe Burrow. I don't think, at least I'm not taking it this way, I don't think that Brian Callahan is comparing Cam Ward to Joe Burrow. He just has the experience of working with a number 1 overall pick quarterback. And he's referencing what he did with that quarterback as he tries to prepare Cam Ward. I know that Cam Ward at the moment is not on the same level as Joe Burrow, but it is an experience that Brian Callahan had that he's leaning on as he prepares another number 1 overall pick quarterback.
He's comparing, like you said, he's comparing the experience. He's not comparing the player.
I agree with that.
Joe Burrow wasn't a top 5 quarterback when he got to Cincinnati. It took him not until he got his team to the Super Bowl that he was considered a top tier, a top elite quarterback. So let's not just think that all of a sudden Joe stepped on the scene and he was just a top 5 quarterback. No, it took him time. Just like it will take Cam Ward time if he is going to become that. It's going to take him time. But like Adam said, he's not comparing the player. He's comparing the experience.
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on the Titans quarterback situation on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. But coming up next, we turn our attention back toward the Nashville Predators. Barry Trotz addressed reporters for more than an hour yesterday, including an opening statement that lasted at least 30 minutes, if not a few minutes longer than that. But yesterday, to me, was a pivotal day in the career of Barry Trotz as Predators general manager. And I'll explain why coming up next. 615-737-1025, the 615 Open Charity Golf Tournament benefiting Folds of Honor, presented by Gary Force Acura at Hermitage Golf Course, is on Thursday, May 29th. That's 3 weeks from this Thursday. Sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com. D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Willie Donick out the next couple of days. He's at his daughter's college graduation.
Congrats.
Congratulations. I combine the words congratulations and graduation to
Congratulations.
gratulations, I suppose.
That could be a new word.
Yeah, it might be.
Congratulations.
Patent pending, patent pending, patent pending. So yesterday on our program, we carried Barry Trotz's season-ending news conference live. And we did not expect it to go more than an hour, but that's what it did. And yesterday, Barry Trotz, the most newsworthy item was that he announced that Andrew Brunette will return as Predators coach next season, I should say, despite the team's 30th place finish in the NHL standings. And that, of course, did not help them get the number 1 pick in the NHL draft lottery. They picked 5th next month at the NHL draft, which was the worst case scenario for the Predators, but we touched on that already. First, I want to play part of Barry Trotz's opening statement, where he explains the reason why he is retaining Andrew Brunette. This was Barry Trotz yesterday.
Andrew Brunette, to me, is a good young coach. That's why I hired him. He's a good young coach that had a tough situation this year in terms of our team, maybe our makeup, how we came together or didn't come together. Right at the start of the year, and he needs to add a lot of tools to his tool belt. I think I was that guy. I was Andrew Brunette way back when. In terms of, I thought I had a lot of tools in my tool belt, and you find out you have to add a couple more. I think he did add some during the year. I think he's going to add some at the World Championships this year. He's part of the Canadian staff. Good young people, when you believe in them, just like a good young player, you stick with them. And Andrew Brunette is just like a young player. We could have did the easy thing, make a change and see if we can get a bump up, whatever. I didn't do that. I believe in developing people. I believe he's a good young coach. He's a good young hockey mind, and Andrew's going to work hard to find the solution. He's a solution-based guy, as well as myself. We'll find that solution, and they've met with the players, the leadership group, and he will continue to do that. He'll make adjustments in terms of, everybody asks us, is the right system, all that. We've looked at everybody's system. We looked at the trends. The staff has given me a outline of every team, of what everybody's doing. I watch on my own. I watch lately as a scout because we're getting into the draft. I also watch what's working in the playoffs for the teams that are there, and there's some good teams. So there will be changes. They will make those adjustments. That's what a good young hockey mind does, and Andrew will do that.
So that was Barry Trotz explaining his decision to bring back Andrew Brunette. And I admire Trotz's resoluteness, because there is a certain word that starts with C that I can't use because it's been banned on the program.
Can't use it.
So I admire his resoluteness. And the one takeaway that I came away with from the news conference yesterday, Derek, is that Barry Trotz's decision to retain Andrew Brunette is a major inflection point in his tenure as Predators general manager. Barry Trotz is going to be judged on a lot of things, but this decision is at the top of that list right now. Barry Trotz believes in Andrew Brunette. He compared him to a young player who is still developing, and that you don't give up on a young player if you believe in that young player. He believes that Andrew Brunette is a good young coach who will learn from this season and be better because of it. And Barry Trotz, bluntly, better be right about that. Because if this does not work, especially if it does not work immediately, if the Predators get off to a similar start to the one they had this season, they started 0-5. If that happens, it's going to reflect poorly on Burnett, but it's also going to reflect poorly on Barry Trotz. And if Barry Trotz has to make the hard decision and move on from Andrew Burnett if things don't go well at one point next season, it's going to be an admission of failure by Barry Trotz. And there were multiple questions yesterday looking to pin down Barry Trotz on how long are you going to give Andrew Burnett at the start of next season to show that he's doing the right things, making the necessary adjustments, all of those things. And Barry would not give a specific number or length of time. But my point is this. Again, Barry Trotz's decision to retain Andrew Burnett as Predators head coach is a major inflection point in his tenure as Predators GM. I know a lot of Predators fans were upset by the decision yesterday. It's understandable, but we'll see what happens. But for Barry Trotz's sake, he better be right about this.
Listen, this is a decision, I believe. And I'm not going to say this. I'm not going to be hyperbolic about it. So I'm not going to say in regards to the organization, but he's in serious jeopardy of draining all that he's built up with the fan base. He is. I'm not saying that, that's the same for the organization. No, I think the organization is going to give him time to truly, do what he wants to do as a GM. And listen, he made some good moves. They just hadn't worked out. Yeah, I don't know anybody that scoffed at those moves when he made them in the offseason. It just didn't work out last season. But make no mistake, because we talked a little bit about this year. How long will it take before the fan base start to turn sour on Barry Trotz? So again, it's not with the organization. At least I don't believe. I'm not going to be that, hyperbolic about it. But I think for the fan base, I think it is. If this doesn't work out, if it start off on a bad note like it did last year, you are draining, all that you've built up with this fan base. And I'm not saying it's just it's a huge hole in the bottom of the bucket. No, but there's starting to be some cracks and there's starting to be some leakage now. So what was that? Goodness.
That was on me, my bad.
I don't worry about it. So with that now, here's the other thing. I know Barry, you may trust him. You may trust Coach Bruno. Good. But if those guys in the locker room doesn't trust him, it doesn't mean anything. So whatever he heard, coupled to what he was thinking as a GM, caused him to bring back, Coach Bruno. Maybe, and he said, I talked to guys several times, not just once. I've talked to guys, and we know who he was probably more than likely talking about. Marchessault, guys like that. Talk to them more than once because he wanted to make sure that, okay, I know what I want to do, but let me go back to them. Let me talk to them now that they've cooled off a little bit. And let me see where they're at. And it may have changed with those guys. So that may have further, cemented what he was thinking as far as keeping Coach Bruno. But again, make no mistake, from a fan base standpoint, if they get off on the same start they did last year, man, you're going to see a bunch of fans howling and screaming.
One thing that I also took away from Barry Trotz's news conference yesterday, and I said this yesterday as we were reacting to it right after it ended. One thing that Predators fans love about Barry Trotz, one thing that reporters and media types love about Barry Trotz is that Barry Trotz has never met a microphone that he did not like. And I appreciate that Barry Trotz is willing to talk and share details that most GMs and most coaches would not share. I appreciate that about Barry Trotz. But I thought he did himself a disservice yesterday with his opening statement. We were joking about it yesterday. How long had he been talking? I think his opening statement, David came in here, said it was 27 minutes. So let's round it up to 30. It was roughly half an hour of Barry Trotz talking before he took questions. And my assumption is that Barry Trotz went into that thinking to himself, I am going to explain everything that
Mhm.
you all are going to ask me about right off the top. But it reminded me of a term that I've heard in the political realm. It's called flooding the zone, where you share so much that it's hard for people to keep up with everything
Mhm.
that you're saying, that it's hard to focus in on one thing. And I think that his opening statement was so meandering that his message got muddled.
Mhm.
It wasn't clear exactly what he was talking about. He was moving in so many different directions, talking about 5-on-5 play and the rookies who made their NHL debuts and the composition of the dressing room. And then he finally got to Andrew Burnett. So I think Barry Trotz, again, I appreciate Barry Trotz. A lot of people in this town, whether you're a reporter or a Predators fan, have gotten to know Barry Trotz and you like Barry Trotz. And the reason why you like Barry Trotz so much is because he's so affable, because he's easy to have a conversation with. But I do think that he did himself, again, a disservice yesterday by not coming to the podium with bullet points and basically saying, succinctly, here's what went wrong. Here's how we're going to try to fix it. Here's where I stand on Andrew Burnett. Now I will take your questions. I think that he tried to shove so many things into that opening statement that fans who were listening were thinking, what is he talking about?
He tried to explain everything. He tried to anticipate whatever question that was going to be asked. So he wanted to answer all of those questions. We were laughing, last break about him, after it was done, he was like, all right, we're done. Like, no, Barry, you still got a lot more questions to answer. I know you felt that you answered every question that someone could have possibly answered, but no, they still have their questions. So that told me that one, listen, we laugh at it. I think it's funny at times, but Barry, I think he's a talker. He loves telling stories, and he's telling the story of his team. We talked about this yesterday. He's telling the story of his team, why it went the way it went. And when you're telling a story, sometimes you may get off track and you may start talking about these, sort of side things within the story. And people start to lose you a little bit. But you're trying to tie it all back because in your mind, it means something in the big picture of what you're talking about. But like you said, people are like, you're just talking about this. Now you're like, Barry, we can't keep up with you. I don't think he's doing, maybe he is, I don't know. But I don't think he's doing it on purpose. I just think he's telling the story of his team and trying to answer every question that you would possibly have.
It reminded me, and if Chase is listening, I know he's going to think this is funny. It reminded me of a classic Simpsons bit with Grandpa Simpson. He was talking about telling people stories that don't go anywhere. So he was talking about how I needed a new heel for my shoe. So I decided to go to Morganville, which is what they called Shelbyville in those days. So I tied an onion to my belt, which was the style at the time. Now, to take the ferry cost a nickel. And in those days, nickels had pictures of bumblebees on them. And the story's not going anywhere. And that's what I thought yesterday as I was listening to Barry Trotz. I was like, he's just telling us something. Where is this going? And I say this again respectfully because I respect Barry Trotz. I've gotten to know Barry Trotz over the years. I think he's a great man. I think he's a great representative of the game of hockey and this city specifically. But I just thought it was just all over the place. He would have benefited yesterday from having clear, concise talking points. I also don't think he should have taken 20 minutes into his opening statement to address Andrew Burnett because that's what everybody was there to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Are you firing the coach or not? So ultimately, I just think that this decision to retain Barry Trotz is ultimately what a lot of people are going to judge Barry Trotz on. So I hope he's right for his sake. One texter says Barry Trotz will let Brunette learn on the job at our expense and will eventually win with another franchise. We don't need to be that. We need someone who can deliver results now. And I will say that as it took longer and longer for us to hear from Barry Trotz, the idea of maybe he's reconsidering creeped into my mind. And we talked about all of the highly qualified coaches who were available. And there are still some highly qualified coaches who are available. But Barry Trotz decided to stick with Andrew Burnett. And I think the perception of Trotz's performance as GM from the fans is going to be based on a lot of things, but primarily this decision. 615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the Predators' decision to retain Andrew Burnett as coach. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Coming up next, you heard in that clip we played earlier in the segment that Barry Trotz said that Andrew Burnett needs to add a lot of tools to his tool belt. What are those tools? We'll discuss that coming up next. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Well, I think just, any time that you make adjustments, making sure that you get to the accountability factor right through your roster. It doesn't matter in terms of a player who's played 600 games or a player who played 6. There should be the accountability factor. Obviously, the guys that have long NHL careers or been in the league a long time have a longer rope. But in terms of the respect for all those guys, that has to be the same. I know that it's key with Andrew, but just making sure that we're all playing the right way all the time. And I didn't think we did enough of it. And that's an area where, like I said, sometimes we're all too nice. And I can be a nice guy, John, as you know, but I can also be I know when I don't have to be a nice guy, and I don't have any problem with that.
That was Barry Trotz yesterday, asked about the tools that Andrew Brunette needs to add to his tool belt, which is what he said in the opening statement. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Before I get to my next point, one texter disagrees with my assertion. Lorne says sticking with Brunette shouldn't be a major inflection point. Worst case scenario is this team still sucks and we tank again as we should have been doing this season and next anyway. The signing of the free agents last year went away from the tank, but it ended up not killing the tank. And since the cap is jumping so much, these players will be trade assets if the team continues to tank, and it didn't cost us any players or picks, which is true. I understand that. That signing Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea, all it cost the Predators was money. It did not cost them any draft assets, any players on their roster, any prospects. I get that. My point is that I think a lot of Predators fans are not going to trust Barry Trotz's judgment if Brunette comes back, which he is, when Brunette comes back and this team continues to struggle. I think it's going to put a dent in the trust that Predators fans have in Barry Trotz's judgment if the decision to retain Brunette does not work. But when it comes to the accountability factor, I'm glad that Barry Trotz brought that up because that was something that ticked me off early in the season, that I thought that Andrew Brunette was not holding his top players accountable. And I singled out Jonathan Marchessault because he got off to a terrible start this season. I believe it took him 20 games to record his first 5-on-5 points as a member of the team. It took him that long. I think we were in mid to late November by the time he had a 5-on-5 point. And I remember early in the season, Marchessault doing things in games that actively hurt the team. And I went back and looked at it this morning. December 5th, the Predators were in Montreal playing the Canadiens. I believe it was the first period of the game. The score was 0-0. The Predators were on the power play. And I think Steven Stamkos fired a one-timer that was blocked in front, so it didn't hit the net. And Marchessault was on the right side of the ice. He chased down the puck and threw this blind backhand pass that was intercepted by the Canadiens, who took the puck the other way for an odd man rush and scored a goal. It was clearly on Jonathan Marchessault. He had a turnover on the power play that led directly to a goal against. And guess what? He still ended up playing at about 20 minutes in the game. His ice time was not docked for making that mistake. I remember another game. I believe it was in Calgary. It was the end of the game. The Predators were down, I think, by a goal. Marchessault has the puck in neutral ice and hands the puck right to a Calgary Flames player who just says, "Gee, thanks," and shoots the puck at the open net, and the Flames win the game. And again, Marchessault, at least outwardly, did not suffer any consequences for making a play that helped cost the team the game. And that bothered me early in the season. So if Barry Trotz is telling Andrew Brunette, you can't be so nice anymore, you need to be a little mean, like the guy from Dodgeball, Patches O'Houlihan. Yeah. You got to get angry. You got to get mean. Like if that is what Barry Trotz is saying to Andrew Brunette, I'm all for it, because I did think that Brunette, at least again, outwardly, I'm not in the meeting rooms. I'm not in the dressing room. I'm not around the team every day like I used to be. So I don't know if Brunette had a hard conversation with Jonathan Marchessault. But in terms of ice time, which is how players get punished, I did not see any repercussions for those plays. So if Trotz is saying, hey, Burnett, Andrew, he's not going to call him Burnett, Bruno, you got to get mean, I'm fine with that.
It's okay. Here's the thing. And maybe, hockey and football is a little different in regards to their coaches coming in. And maybe it could be exactly the same. I see some similarities in most sports. There are probably more similarities than not there in hockey. But when a football coach comes in, and I've been through this, let me see, 1, 2, twice.
You're talking about new coaches?
New coaches, new system, everything else. I've been through it in college when Nick Saban came in, and I went through it in Baltimore when Brian Billick got fired, and then Harbaugh came in.
Yeah.
Head coaches, when they come in, there's a certain tone they want to set. It's almost in sense they're being, a-holes, basically. Can I say that? I think I can.
You can say a-hole. I think that's
a-hole.
fine.
Yeah. I'm sorry, young kids, but I'm just trying to explain this. You can be an a-hole, okay? And guys are starting to sort of fall in, and some will fall to the wayside, but the core of your team is starting to develop. And then you can kind of sort of back off from there. But it's hard to go in being a nice guy, and then all of a sudden you gotta, show you gotta lay at foot or something. You gotta put it down. It's hard to do it the second go around. He should have came in with the mentality of, you know what, I got to push these guys. And I'm not saying, I don't want to give the illusion that he did. He probably did. But the way it seems, there were some guys, one guy in particular, where they were not on the same page. And it started very early with a few guys, really. Stamkos. No, it was Marshall Show. Not Marshall Show. It was Marshall Show and Brady Shea. Brady Shea wasn't playing well. And what were we saying? Somebody needs to sit because they're not playing well. I think it was Brady Shea at the time.
Yeah, but my point was that I remember we talked about this with Elliot Freeman early in the season. My question to Elliot was, does Andrew Burnett need to make an example out of one of these veteran players by sitting them for a game? And Elliot's response was, if I recall correctly, because it's been several months, was, you signed those players to help you win. So does scratching Brady Shea for a game example, does that give you a better chance of winning? Well, based on the way he was playing, maybe it did. But I think, yeah, go ahead.
But but when you do something like that and you not necessarily, listen, you're not going to bench him, but you move him, take away some. And that's what we talked about. Take away some of his
right.
minutes.
And look, there are a lot of you out there that did not love the John Hines experience when he was head coach of the Predators. But there's one thing that John Hines did early on. He made it clear that if you aren't playing the way that we need to play, you will not play.
Boom.
There were games where Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene and Philip Forsberg and Victor Arvidsson were on the bench for long stretches of time because they were not playing the way that John Hines wanted them to play.
And Hines, what did he do? He took away their minutes early. He didn't let them.
It was early in his tenure.
And early in his tenure, where he had to show him, like, he had to show these guys, I'm the coach. There's a certain level of play that I want, and y'all are not giving it to me. I can't bench you, but what I can do is take away some of your minutes. You probably hate that worse than anything because you're playing, but then you're not playing for long stretches of time. Even, at least, if I'm taking you out of the lineup, right hand, like, I'm not playing. But when I take away your minutes and you just sitting there, it does do something to you, do something to your psyche.
I found an article I wrote in February of 2020. So this was roughly a month, a little bit more than a month after John Hines took over for Peter Laviolette. And here's a quote from John Hines. You've got to earn your ice time and you've got to keep your ice time. That's the only way to eliminate complacency. We have to have a standard that we're going to play to. You need your top players to play at a high standard. They need to be guys that are driving your team. when your top players are playing the way they need to play, they get 20 minutes of ice. But if your top players aren't playing as well as they need to, or at the level they need to, you can keep playing them, but they're not going to produce
And
offense.
that never came into play last year with Coach Bruno.
It absolutely did not.
And he did not. That's something you got to do on the front end. It's harder to come back around and try to do it the next following year. It can happen, but it's a little bit harder to do on the back end. If you do it on the front end, let these guys know that, hey, listen, this is a standard of play that we got to have. I can't bench you, nor do I want to bench you, but I am going to take away your minutes. And until you either buy into what we're doing or you start to play better, the minutes are going to stay the same. Hines said it. Earn your minutes. They're not giving it to you. And I'm not sure that Coach Bruno can do that coming back around. Now, I do believe they probably got an understanding now. These guys that we talked about, periodically throughout the season, and we know who they are, the veteran guys that they brought in, or the veteran guys that were here. I'm sure in this offseason, in these meetings, they've gotten an understanding of what they are looking for. So when they come into this season, there's no ambiguity about it. This is what I'm looking for. And if you don't give me this, this is what will happen. I can explain that to you now.
I'm thinking of it like if you're a parent and you have a certain set of rules, maybe you're a bit of you have a relaxed attitude about certain things. And then all of a sudden you decide to become a disciplinarian and be like, all right, you can't do that anymore. Well, do you think your child is going to listen?
No.
They're going to like, sure, Dad. Yeah. Okay, cool. Whatever. Like, I'm wondering if that is an issue, right? Like, I'm wondering if Brunette takes a harder approach on these players, if they're just going to be like, what's this guy's deal?
The more and more I think about it, I think Barry not only was talking about the guys on the ice, the guys in the locker room, when he talked about the paralyzing, I think he was talking about the coaching staff as well.
Interesting.
I really, because it, in a sense, it paralyzed what they wanted to do or how they wanted to do it, because you brought these three guys in and it's not working. So it's like, do I say something to them? Do I go hard on them or do I not? Do I let the other guys in the locker room do it? And I'm not saying that he just completely turned his back and walked away. I'm sure he addressed some things, but your own GM said that the circumstances this past season, paralyzed the ability to have that leadership. Probably not completely like for the whole season, but the majority of the season, I think that was paralyzed. And I don't think he was just talking about the players. I think he was talking about the coaching staff as well.
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. But coming up next, buried within that opening statement, which lasted, again, roughly 30 minutes, Trotz did say something that caught my attention. And I think that Derek Mason is the best person, at least in this room, equipped to answer a question that I have about the dynamics of a team. And we'll get to that next. 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. This is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time now. If you have set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting some type of goal to shed some extra pounds, only to face disappointment. But I got some solutions, because I got some good people that will take care of you. Because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only, not to everybody else, so you won't get the same sort of tailored nutrition that someone else gets. You get your own, okay? You don't get Adams. You don't get David. You don't get mine. You get your own. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
To me, we got good players, we got good people. We didn't miss on that at all. Okay, expectations are very high. There is some, I'll say, a weight with those expectations. I think the expectations probably were a little bit unrealistic, and I sort of tried to say that, but everybody was really excited, and I understand why. But the reality is that we got off to a poor start. Some of those acquisitions, I want to say, in our leadership, sort of paralyzed each other a little bit. They looked at each other with admiration. Guys looking at Steven Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea and going, "Hey, those are really good players," and we're, and our guys are on the flip side, Stammer and those guys, the respect they have for Yost and O'Reilly and that. And I think we got paralyzed a little bit waiting for, where do I fit? How How's it going to happen? And I think I sort of mentioned that with legacy players, it does take longer, and the respect that those players have for each other says a lot. A lot of people question how our dressing room was. We've got great guys in our dressing room. They really get along really well. I would say they have a really good dressing room. We have really good guys, and sometimes maybe too nice. Sometimes you don't want to step on each other's toes. So we've had that conversation a little bit.
That was Barry Trotz yesterday during his opening statement at his season-ending news conference. Derek Mason, Adam Vinkin, Willie Donick out today. And that stuck out to me, Derek, about when Barry Trotz used the word paralyzed, when we were listening to it live, my ears perked up because I thought that was an interesting choice of words. And talking about the dressing room, and I believe you and Willie used the term mutual admiration. Maybe guys were a little bit too differential to each other. And it got me thinking about this. And look, Derek, you have spent, I don't have to tell you this, you lived it. You spent the majority of your life in locker rooms. At the collegiate level, at the professional level,
High school level.
at the high school level. You are a veteran of locker rooms. But I'm just going to name you some of the players that you shared locker rooms with in the NFL. And there were a lot of them, but there were 5 that stuck out to me. Eddie George, Steve McNair, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs, Titans, no pun intended, of the game of football. And the question I have for you, Derek, as it relates to the Predators and what we just heard from Barry Trotz, does there need to be healthy tension in the locker room in order for a team to be successful?
I think there needs to be, because healthy tension brings about competitiveness. I think high level competitiveness. See, I think it works different in hockey than it does in football. I mean, I was thinking about this over the break because, listen, Ray and Ed, those and Suggs, mainly Ray and Ed, those were stalwarts on the defensive side. So those guys can be a certain way with the defensive guys. They can be that way, but they can be that way to a defensive guy because it's more like it's us. And then say on the offense, myself, Jonathan Ogden, Eddie George, Steve McNair, we can be a certain way with the offense. And you never see it on the defensive side of the ball. You don't get that. Hockey and basketball, you don't get that because the same people that's playing defense is playing offense.
Right.
So it's like, do I say something now? It seems like basketball, they're more so in your face. That's more of an alpha. That's an alpha sport too. Because it's because everybody's really, it's one-on-one. So we're competing every time I come down the court. So they have that mentality. And I wonder, and I'm sure hockey has it on the ice, but do you have it in your locker room? Can you, because it's not like me jumping on my guy, like my guy to play on the offensive side of the ball, because I could jump on my guy, but I'm not going to say anything to the defensive guy because they're doing their whole thing. Now, if the whole team's not playing well, then okay, we can say something as a group, but pertaining to the team. But when the defense isn't playing well, Derek doesn't say, y'all need to get y'all stuff together. That's where Ray Lewis and Ed Reed come. On the offensive side, we're not doing well. Yeah, those guys may say something to me like, man, we need to pick this up at home. How do we do this? But it's up to me. It's up to Eddie. It's up to Steve to take care of the offensive side of the ball. But if we need to address the whole team, we can. Is that the same way? Do you have that same sort of eagerness or sort of openness to criticize somebody playing both sides of the ball or both sides of the ice? Because you may be doing great on the offensive side, but then not so great on the defensive side. But I can't take you out or I can't do this because we need you offensively, so I can't say too much to you.
You're right about the differences. I think it was last year at some point, Jeffrey Simmons said something about the quarterbacks getting sacked or something like that. And we were just kind of like, that's weird. Like you should probably focus on controlling the defensive side of the ball. But nevertheless, I imagine, though, that you and your fellow receivers, if a receiver that you were playing with needed a kick in the butt, you were going to give it to him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to be personal. You weren't going to say something to scar him emotionally, but if he needed a swift kick in the rear end, you were going to give it to him. And look, when the Predators added these players in free agency, and you could even include the first crop of free agents that Barry Trotz brought in. Roman Josi has been the captain of the Predators for several years. Ryan O'Reilly has been a captain in the NHL. Steven Stamkos has been a captain in the NHL. Before he was traded, Ryan McDonough has been a captain in the NHL. Jonathan Marchessault has won a Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP. So has Ryan O'Reilly. Like, I understand, these guys admire each other's games. Even when they weren't playing with each other, they watched the game. I get that. But I do think that based on what Barry Trotz said, I do think this team needs more of an edge. And maybe now that they've gotten to know each other, they've been through a full season together, maybe it'll be easier for them to say the hard things. And I think that's why Jonathan Marchessault's comments at the end of the season struck a nerve with a lot of people, because the Predators, haven't had a lot of players who were that outspoken. And Marchessault, that's been his personality, I assume, throughout his whole life. But as far as I've known watching him in the NHL, that's the type of player he is. But I do think, I'm wondering, for example, a player like Tommy Novak. Tommy Novak, who of course isn't here anymore, but Tommy Novak, he comes in last season, or this season, at the beginning of this season, and he is expected to be the second line center. On one wing, he has one of the greatest goal scorers of his generation. On the other wing, he has a player who, through grit and determination, carved out an excellent career for himself, was coming off of his first 40-goal season, and a couple of years ago was playoff MVP. And I'm wondering if Tommy Novak was a bit starstruck by playing with those two. And I get it to a degree, but you can't let that get in the way of being successful. So I am wondering if now that these players have grown more comfortable with each other and have gotten to know each other, that maybe more hard conversations can be had, and that healthy tension, that competitive fire can be more prevalent in the dressing room.
I don't even think it's because, listen, these are not hard conversations to truly have in a locker room that is built on a common shared goal, and that is winning. So I've found that the best locker rooms are locker rooms that you don't have to have hard conversations. They're just conversations, because we all are headed down the same sort of path. We all want the same things. I know that the other things, contracts and stuff like that, they eventually come into play. But what is our goal? Our goal is to win a Super Bowl. We all got that in common. And to win the Stanley Cup for hockey guys, you all have that in common. But it's not difficult for guys in the locker room that I have, because here's the thing. Because it's almost like these factions within a building, within a team. And it's not like factions that are cliquish or factions that are going to, cause turmoil within a locker room. It's factions, because of positions, receivers, offensive line, quarterback, running back, guys like that. So when I'm in my receiver room, they're not hard conversations. Why? Because I spend my time with these guys. We get to know each other. We get to hang out. I know their families. They know mine. So there's a level of trust built. So they're not called hard conversations. It's just, dude, you need to start doing what you need to do, man. Either you going to start doing it or you're not going to play. That's just the way it is. So those conversations aren't hard. I don't know if it's like that in a hockey locker room, because maybe like basketball, all of them meet together. And it's harder to sort of build, even though they seem like they got a great friendship locker room, but it's harder to sort of, because I can take my 3 guys and be like, listen, y'all, we need to get our stuff together. But trying to take 23 guys, that may be a little bit different. Some guys may not feel comfortable with talking to, or sort of being a leader of that many guys. It's a lot easier for guys on football teams to do it because we're all broken up. But then when we come together, it's always one or two voices amongst the other leaders.
Again, if the Predators want to hire Patches O'Houlihan,
Start throwing monkey
right?
wrenches at
If you
them.
can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. If they need to get a little meaner, I'm okay with that. I do think that healthy tension. And look, I spent most of my days for more than 7 years in that Predators dressing room covering this team. And when you're in the dressing room, you can get a sense of that dynamic. And I think the best dressing rooms, the ones that I was in covering the Predators, were the ones where you could sense that healthy tension, where maybe guys weren't getting along every day, but they pushed themselves to be better on the ice. So I do think that would be one way to go about it. 615-737-1025. I'm delaying here because David is on the phone, and I want to see if this caller wants to get in on this conversation before we go to break. Let's see. David, what's the word, man? Does he want to talk? Okay, let's go. Let's do it.
We got him.
Let's go. Who is it? David is on our
David.
phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com. David, right under the wire, my friend. Thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey guys, yeah, thanks for the quick comment. This is one of my major concerns. I think when they elevated Brunette up to this league was his ability to be able to work with more veteran players. I think he was good, with the more junior players. But I'm just curious, and I agree. I think the players themselves need to coach themselves up. But how can Trotz get in, work with Brunette, and help him understand that, hey, you got this unique situation with veterans? Anyway, I'll hang up and listen. Thanks. Enjoy your show.
Thank you for the call. How about
Thank you, David.
We appreciate the call. Maybe we can answer that question after we talk to Teron Davenport, because we had to bump Teron yesterday for Barry Trotz's news conference. So Teron Davenport, ESPN, NFL Nation Titans reporter, will join us next. But it's a good question there from David, and we'll get back to it. But Teron Davenport coming up next, 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Bingen, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D. Mace Fingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, let's go to our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com, and welcome in our friend, Teron Davenport, ESPN, NFL Nation, Titans reporter. Hello, Teron. How are you?
I'm doing well. How you guys doing?
I am
Pretty good.
excellent. Derek is as well. So, Teron, earlier we were talking about the Titans and Brian Callahan and Mike Borgonzi specifically, about how they are stressing that there will be a competition for reps at quarterback. And to me, the novice, who is not in the locker room every day, to me, it feels a little bit like lip service, because I feel like it's inevitable that Cam Ward is ultimately going to take the lion's share of the starting reps and be the starting quarterback. So I asked this question to Tim Hasselbeck earlier. I would love your opinion as well. What is the benefit for the Titans to tempering those expectations perhaps and not just anointing Cam Ward the starter right away?
Well, I think we saw last year what happens when you just put it all out there and you don't really taper the expectation and set the expectation, so to speak, and you fall short, and that's a big issue. Now, I don't think they're putting competition out there just because they think they're going to fall short. I think it is setting the expectation and making the young man compete somewhat, because just because they're saying it's a competition, that doesn't mean that it's, a competition like, two guys who have a legitimate chance to start. It's just like me saying, hey, it's a nice day out today. It is a nice day, but to what degree of nice is it? So there's different levels.
So, Teron, you published a story on ESPN.com looking at some of the questions that the Titans need to answer post-draft. And one of the questions in the article is, did the Titans address pass rusher sufficiently? Let's ask you that question back. Did the Titans address pass rusher sufficiently in your mind?
I would say no. I don't think they're in a position to where, and listen, I love the upside that Femi Oladejo has. I think he can, blossom into a good player. I've seen this happen before. I remember Brandon Graham got pushed outside, as a stand-up outside backer at the Senior Bowl. And, he had a rough first couple years with the Eagles. And that's not to say that Femi Oladejo is Brandon Graham, but I'm just looking at similarities in guys who were late to the position but still got drafted high. I don't think they addressed it adequately enough. The Draymond Jones is going to be interesting, because talking to Mike McDonald, he said that Draymond could stand up and rush the passer. He has that versatility to play anywhere from, 3 all the way up to 7. And in some cases, rush as a wide 9 type of guy. I don't think they have an impactful pass rusher. I think with Zadarius Smith still on the market, that's something I definitely would look at. But you think about it, they don't have a single guy who has, a double-digit sack season. And I think the highest season, I think Arden Key might have it at 7.5, if I'm not mistaken.
So you mentioned Zadarius Smith still being out there. What do you think it would take? What kind of contract do you think it would take to lure him to Nashville?
I don't think it would take a whole lot, honestly. I feel you look at a veteran like Z Smith, what he wants is an opportunity to play. He wants an opportunity to be in a good environment. He's going to be attracted to Denard Wilson's scheme. So I don't think it would take much. I don't know what the number would exactly be, but it's not like it's going to break the bank.
We'll talk with Teron Davenport discussing the Tennessee Titans and their upcoming season. Now, Teron, when you're looking at this quarterback situation, and listen, we know it's not a competition when it comes to the other guys behind Cam Ward. That's not who he's competing with. I told Adam and Willie that he's competing with time. He's competing with when they give him the playbook to the first game of the season. That's what he's competing with. What can they? How far along you believe he needs to be? Is it they need to trust him, or does he need to trust what's going on before they put him in?
Yeah, I think it's a two-way street, right? It's just like a regular relationship. You have to be able to trust your lady, and your lady has to be able to trust you. And not too beyond all, like you know what a person's capable of, and you understand that. but you have to trust that person. I think it's the same thing where Cam Ward and this whole idea that, he absolutely has to start the season on the bench. No, I think he should play. This is a decision that they made when they drafted him number 1 and they didn't get, a backup other than Brandon Allen or Tim Boyle. So it's a matter of him trusting them to put him in position and them trusting him to deliver when they put him in position. So the ideal thing is to make this, you look at what, they did in Washington with Jaden Daniels. They found out exactly what he was comfortable working in at LSU, and it was just like a second season at LSU initially, and then they opened the concepts up and introduced him to more things as the year went on, and he just continued. There was that low, right? There was that down period, but this man did lead them to the NFC Championship game. And I'm not saying Cam Ward could do that. I'm not saying he will or he won't, but it is the same type of program that you have to be on, about allowing him to hit the ground running, using things that he's very familiar with and things that he's comfortable with, and designing the offense. I got so excited. I said design multiple ways, designing the offense around him.
And isn't that because Brian Callahan's been through that with Joe Burrow,
exactly,
figuring out what he did well at LSU and trying to find a way to implement that into the offense that exists now, to help him sort of, be able to get on that bike and ride a little bit faster than not. So that is something that I'm sure Brian Callahan and that coaching staff is looking for in regards to Cam Ward and trying to get him up to speed, because ultimately if he's not the starter, then we have a problem. That's just the way I feel about it, because listen, they're not drafting guys. And I know it sounds great and it probably would be the best thing to do, but we're not talking about what's best to do. We're talking about how fast can we get this quarterback up to speed where we can start him day one, because you don't draft a guy number 1 overall. Just look at all the picks in the last 10 years. You don't draft a guy number 1 overall and say, oh, we're going to have him sit at no position. So why are we expecting that from the quarterback?
Right, exactly. And the thing is, it may be the best decision to let him sit and wait. It may not be, right? You look at Jaden Daniels didn't sit. He got right in. You look at, some of the other guys. I mean, there's multiple. Joe Burrow didn't sit. And again, I'm not saying Cam Ward is Joe Burrow, but these are other situations where it worked. I think
C.J. Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, all these guys.
I mean, look, you find there's multiple examples. And to me, I think that it's a decision that they made, because I still remember vividly, I literally remember where I was standing talking to Mike Borgonzi at the Senior Bowl. And I remember him saying, we got to figure out if these guys coming out are guys that we could play right away, or if we need to have a bridge quarterback. He said that was when I asked him about the plan, that's specifically what he said. But he was like, no matter what, we're going to build in the trenches first, but we got to figure out which destination we're going to go with this quarterback situation. And that tells you right there, they believe Cam Ward will play immediately, and he will.
Now, okay, do you feel, think about this or answer this. When you're looking at both sides of the ball, you're just looking at the team, both sides of the ball, who do you think more pressure is on? Not pressure, I think, from the organization as far as what Borgonzi or Brinket are thinking, but I'm saying pressure on how to get this team to where they need to go quickly, or the quarterback quickly. Dennard Wilson, and this may be a crazy question to answer. Dennard Wilson or Brian Callahan? Because I look at it from this standpoint. If you have a top half or you have a top 10 defense, that gives the offensive coordinator / head coach more leeway to work with his quarterback, because he understands that we are going, more times than not, we're going to get 3 and outs. We're going to get you the ball back if you turn it over. We're going to be able to allow you to bring the quarterback along slowly. Why? Because games are going to be 14-13, 17-10, somewhere around that age, where we still got an opportunity to win football games late in the games, even with a rookie quarterback. So I look at it from this standpoint, that there is an immense pressure on Denard Wilson to get this defense to playing the way he wants them to play, because if you get them playing a lot better, it takes the pressure off the offense.
Yeah, I'll reason with that, and that's something that they said. You want to be in a situation where Cam Ward isn't asked to score 30 points a week, But at the same time, I think conversely, Cam Ward being able to put up points, minimize turnovers, good field positioning, all that stuff, like not have, how many times we see Jeffrey Simmons has said it over and over again. Like, he feels like the defense is a fire team, right? They always have to go out and put out the fire, but the mindset's always, okay, no matter where the ball gets put down and snapped from, we got to stop them from scoring. So I think, conversely, the offense could help the defense also. Ultimately, it's both sides helping each other. But to me, the pressure is most on Brian Callahan. And I think you look at this situation, and that's why I asked him specifically about that. And he says, it's a privilege. And I think he's right, because you look at this situation, they got a quarterback. It has not worked getting a top 10 quarterback for this organization, to the level of success that they've wanted. And that's required, when you get a quarterback that high. Brian Callahan has a history of working with guys, and it's on him to make this work. And then I think if you look at it, a lot of second-year coaches, that get a new quarterback, go check the internet. Not too many of them are able to make it unless their name is Sean Payton. So, it's just a lot of pressure on him. And ultimately, if things don't go right for the defense, he could make a move. But I think I think this defense is going to be okay, as long as they stay healthy.
Now, and this may be a crazy question, but what do you think the like people within the building, what do you think? Because I saw that Brian Callahan said something about Treylon Burks last week. I think he said he understands what he has to do coming in and being ready and all this other stuff. Basically some of the same stuff he said last year. But how do you think people feel about him within that building? We know that he's had his injuries and his ups and downs, and the fan base has pretty much checked out on him. But what do you think? How do you think they feel about him within the locker room? And I'm saying the building. I'm saying the building, like execs and all those guys.
Okay, yeah, because the players, they're, from what I could gather, they're on some. It is what it is. Like, it's an opportunity for me. That's something that Bryce Oliver should be thinking, right? That's something that a lot of these guys should be thinking. But at the same time, it's like, man, you want to see your fellow, guy on the team do right, right, and be okay. But I think in the building, I think there's a sense of frustration, and that, like, man, there's always something. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, that's kind of been the pattern, right, for Treylon Burks. There's always something, and it's just like, as soon as you get your hopes up and you're like, boom, something else happens, and it's just like, wow, back down to where we were. And I think that's the mindset that a lot of them have. They understand the promise, the hope, but it's just a glimmer of it now, given all the things that have happened.
Do you think people in the building sense that he loves football? And maybe you can't answer it, but I'm just saying, you understand what I'm saying. Like, I've had people say, well, this guy, I don't think he loves football. Yeah,
that's a great question. I think there could be a degree of questioning that. I think there could be a degree. You look at last year, right? Last year, a month from now, last year, the trip to Cabo. Like, that's a trip that Treylon Burks absolutely should have been on. I'm not privy to the exact details. I've been told a reason why, but I haven't, got that directly from him, so I'm not going to put it out there. But to me, there should definitely have been, like, he should have been there. If not before anybody else, he should have at least been there, because it's critical for him to create that relationship. Because we remember what happened with Ryan Tannehill, where it was the disconnect. I remember week after week, hey, Ryan, like, what? Why didn't you go to Treylon? He was open on this. And he would always, say, okay, well, my read took me elsewhere, this, that, and the third. You want to be the guy your quarterback wants to throw to. You want to be the Xavier Restrepo to Cam Ward at Miami. You want to be that. But the only way that you could develop that And you'll hear Xavier talk about that this weekend. The only way you could develop that is by spending time in the film room, on the field, and countless hours together to get to know each other. That was an opportunity that was missed.
Teron, before we let you go, I have an NFL-wide question for you. We saw here Warren Moon give Cam Ward his blessing to wear his number 1. And it feels, and this is anecdotal, but it feels like we're seeing more of that. I know Abdul Carter, he wanted to wear Lawrence Taylor's number. Lawrence Taylor declined. Apparently, Phil Simms was open to giving Abdul Carter number 11. His family intervened and told him to keep it to himself. Where do you stand on young players asking retired players who have their jerseys retired for their numbers?
I mean, I feel if the player doesn't have an issue with it, the veteran, the legend doesn't have an issue with it, I feel it should be okay. And honestly, half of these organizations, like you look at Keith Bulluck, right? Femi Oladejo is wearing number 53. I mean, Chig got number 85. What are we doing here? Like, so if a number is really sacred, those are two numbers that, in my opinion, are sacred, but they've been recycled multiple times. So I'm just like, if the player is okay with it, the legend is, I'm okay with it. But I mean, there's certain circumstances, like Lawrence Taylor. No, you don't ask Lawrence Taylor for the number.
Nah.
Warren Moon is just as much of a legend, in my opinion, one of the best to ever throw a football. But this situation is a little different in that it's Oilers to Titans. I get that, but I mean, again, if the legend's okay, I'm okay.
Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, joining us on D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick. Teron, great stuff as always, my friend. We'll chat next week.
All right, for sure. Appreciate you.
Always a pleasure to talk to TD. 615-737-1025. Some interesting comments there, Derek, about Treylon Burks. Let's explore those. Coming up next, 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. We are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 1025, 1063, the game.
As you look at Burks, excuse me, Traylon Burks in this current situation, like what can you expect from him for this year?
Well, he's got to get healthy first. That's the first part. He's still working back. We'll see where that ends up when he actually gets cleared. But he's got to come in and make some plays. I think he's always had the ability. He's shown flashes of it, and they're just looking for the consistency to show up when it's time to show up. And I thought there was some things that were good last year. But then again, just there's the moment to make the play, right? When the play is there to be made, to make it with consistency and show up production wise when the ball comes your way. And I thought he really improved last year from the time he came in to the shape that he was into training camp. And then, didn't start probably the way that he wanted to, or really any of us wanted to for that matter. And then had the injury. So never really had a chance to get going. But we need to see if we can get the consistency part down. I think that's for everybody on our football team right now, is that execution over time at the rate that's expected.
That was Brian Callahan on Traylon Burks. Have you seen the movie Mean Girls, Derek?
Yes, I have.
Just like Gretchen Wieners with the word fetch, the Tennessee Titans are trying their darndest to make Traylon Burks happen. It's not going to happen. I'm going to have to play Regina George here, Brian Callahan. Traylon Burks is not going to happen. As Teron Davenport notes in the story he wrote that I referenced with him, Burks is recovering from a torn ACL last November and won't be ready to return when the Titans take the field for training camp in July. We've gone through this so many times with Traylon Burks. It's just, again, he's had some awful injury luck. Mm-hmm. But again, let me remind you that in 3 seasons, Traylon Burks has a grand total of 1 receiving touchdown. And I believe he suffered a concussion on that play against the Eagles, if I recall correctly. So
he technically has 2 because he
he recovered a fumble.
Yeah. So technically there's 2.
He has 2 total touchdowns, but he has 1 receiving touchdown. That's my point. He has caught
stuff.
1 touchdown.
Technically, he has 2 touchdowns. He technically has 2 touchdowns. So that's all you need to know.
He is a receiver, and he has 1 receiving touchdown. I stand by that. I am a stickler for details.
Facts.
So
you got me there.
Okay, so I thought those were some pointed comments from Teron Davenport, Derek, on your question about Traylon Burks. He was referencing a trip, and I looked it up to make sure. Will Levis took his skill players to Cabo San Lucas last summer to train, and I don't remember Traylon Burks not being there, but clearly it did not sit well. It sounds like.
There was a trip that I guess Will Levis had took the receivers out and running backs, whoever, and Traylon didn't join him. Now, I don't know why he didn't join him, but he didn't join him. And that's why, because this kid has immense talent. It's there. You see it in spurts. It's there. If it wasn't, they wouldn't have drafted him so high. He was going to be a first-round pick regardless. The Titans just, did what they needed to do and draft them, thinking they were going to get what A.J. Brown was giving them eventually. They were going to get that from Traylon, and it hasn't happened. So this kid has talent, man, and you could just see it in flashes. But, for whatever reason, and some of it has to do, with being available. When you're not available, it's hard to build consistency. And when it's hard to build consistency, it's hard to build trust. And when you can't build that trust, man, you're not going to be on the team for a long time. So, when you're hurt and you haven't shown anything, man, oh man, that becomes frustrating. And that's why I wanted to ask that question, because Brian Callahan has said periodically, and even recently, that Traylon knows what he has to do, take advantage of the opportunities and come in ready to work. And, I just wonder, does he love the game of football? Is he one of those guys that, what can I do for the league, or what can the league do for me? Which one is he? Because there's a a stark difference between, those guys that want to leave a legacy in this game, a good one. You know those guys. You can point those guys out. Even if they may not get there, you can point them out by their work, everything. But then you can point out very quickly the ones that want to ask, well, what can a league do for me? You see those guys. I've seen a lot of them. And I'm trying to figure out which one is he. Do the organization view him as a guy that wants to leave a legacy, not just on his team, a good one, but in the NFL? Or do they look at him as he's one of these guys, he want, to see what the league can do for him? He's not really into it. And what I mean by want to see what the league can do, it's that exterior thing, that exterior stuff. The notoriety that the league play, the money that it gives you, and it affords you to do some things. Are you that type of guy, or do you really love this game? I've always I don't love the game. I love competition. That's what I love. And football was just a vessel. But I love competition. I was the type of dude, my family was the type of people that made me play a guy until always competing. Just because he's bigger don't mean he's better. Compete with him, outlast him. That's where I come from, a background of that. What is his background? That's what I would like. Because your background a lot of times dictates, especially in sports, how you approach it. I'm not saying he didn't have to grind or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. Grinding is, and what I'm explaining is two different things. Coming from a certain area and really putting are two different things. You can come from an area, but not have that in you.
I just remember last summer, you and I were doing the show. We weren't officially a team yet, but we were doing the show from Titans training camp. It was during one of the joint practices with the Seattle Seahawks. And we were on the sideline watching practice. And I believe it was Will Levis lofted a ball toward the corner of the end zone on the sideline we were on. We see Treylon Burks run toward the corner. He goes up for the ball. He disappears because of the vantage point we have. And I don't see him for a few seconds. I'm like, where's Treylon Burks? Next thing I know, he's being helped off the field by a trainer. I'm just like, again, the guy, and I'm not, it's hard to watch Treylon. Look, I don't know Treylon Burks.
Mm-hmm.
I know that he was a first round caliber talent. I know that him being selected with the first round pick that the Titans acquired for trading AJ Brown was always going to be something that hung over him. I just, at this point with the injuries, as Teron said, it's just one step forward, maybe 4 steps back.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that sometimes the best thing for a player in any sport is to get a fresh outlook. And I just don't see a benefit for Treylon Burks being on the Titans anymore. I think it would be best for him to go to another organization where he can start fresh and he can try to impress a new regime. And he doesn't have I was the pick that we got for trading AJ Brown hanging over him. I just don't see a pathway. I just don't see a pathway for Treylon Burks to have a successful career here. One texter, before we get to you, one texter says, I'm old enough to remember when Trevor Maddich called out Treylon's effort last year and everyone got mad. Mm-hmm. Chris says, Derek, do we need to take your temperature? Are you not feeling well? You are way off base. He may have talent, but as you said, availability is the main issue.
How am I off base? That's what I've been saying. The kid has talent, but he just hasn't been able to put it together. Just think about this. I sort of related to this. Everybody, not everybody, but a majority of the people love dogs. And a majority of the people, when they're going to get their dogs, they go to wherever, whether it be, a kennel, a rescue, or you going to get it from what other means. But you go in and you look at the dogs, all of them, and you trying to pick out that one dog you want. And there's always that one dog that is, when you lay that food down, that dog is going. He don't care. He or she is just going. And then there's always that one dog that's just sitting back, like, Well, I eat when everybody else eat. Which one are you, Treylon? Are you that dog that is as soon as I put it down, I don't care if it's 50 dogs out there, I'm trying to be first. Are you that dog?
It reminds me of a neighbor that I have who has 2 pit bulls, I
Mhm.
think, in his front yard. And one is always yapping. Anytime anybody walks by, bark, 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 bark. And the other one just stands there and just kind of looks around. And maybe that dog is vicious if you walk
Yeah.
closer to it, but from across the street, he's just chilling. While the other dog's bark, 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 bark.
But you gotta be, and listen, I don't want to. I'm not trying to assume that he's not, or I'm not trying to assume.
But we
or
don't have
say,
proof of
Yeah,
concept.
and that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not, because the last thing I want is for somebody to say, "Well, Derek says he doesn't have this." No, 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 no. That's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to figure out if he does. Like, are you the dog that I just explained? That when I lay the food down, you rushing in there to get it because you want it, because you hungry, you famished, or you that other dog on the side that, you may be famished and hungry, but you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna wait for everybody else. No, you need to go in there and get your food. Damn it, move everybody else out the way. I'm starving. I'm trying to eat. My family needs to eat.
Jack is in East Nashville on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jack, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
D-Mace, I got a question.
Yes.
I don't want to sound like I'm picking on a man, because Lord knows that's a tough, grown man's business of a game.
Mm-hmm.
But the way people get cut and traded, and you know how fast people can come and go in this business, how has this fella managed to stay here these several years now with so little to show for it? And understandably, yeah, he's been hurt, and a lot of it's not his fault. But I don't understand how he's still here. And I'll listen off air.
Thank you for the call, Jack.
Thank you, Jack. He's here because he was the first. He was their first round pick, and he has shown flashes. And this is what this league is about. If you have what they perceive to be talent, if there's this potential there, especially if you're a first round pick, then they're going to keep you a little bit longer than maybe what your production warrant. Listen, if he leaves, I know what you said about maybe he needs to go somewhere else and just have a new start. But you're not going to go somewhere else and have a new start if you don't have dog in you. If you don't have that ability to say, I want this, I'm hungry, I'm starving, I want to eat. Unless you take that to the next place, you ain't gonna have any success. I don't think in the last 20 years I've seen a first round wide receiver, have a abysmal, first 4 years with one team and then go to another team and have a breakout career. That don't happen. It don't. There's more guys not doing it than there are guys doing it. When you get drafted first round and it don't work out at all with that team, you ain't going someplace else and all of a sudden you're going to start having success. It doesn't work like that. At least not in football at the wide receiver position. It's hard because once you get at the bottom of that depth chart, man, you at the bottom of that depth chart on everybody's roster.
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on Treylon Burks. But coming up next, we'll welcome Jared Stillman onto the program. I hope he's doing okay. He was tweeting through the NHL draft lottery. We'll see how Jared is doing. Coming up next, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Shouldn't we learn by dodging balls that are thrown at us, or?
That's what this sack of wrenches is for. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
What?
Teammates Finken and Donick, 1025, 1063 the game.
Oh,
I made a
man.
couple of Patches O'Houlihan references earlier. Let's welcome in our Patches O'Houlihan, Jared Stillman. Jared, at the beginning of the show, I did a dramatic reading of some of your tweets from last night as you were tweeting through
Why so
the
dramatic?
NHL draft lottery. You said it would be Black Monday. On Friday, you said it would be Black Monday if the Predators announced that Ed Brunette was returning and they dropped a fifth in the NHL draft lottery, both of which happened. So how are you doing today, Jared?
Hey, David, do you have my grid in front of you for today? I know sometimes Reed comes in, or Ian used to come in with the grid in front of him. And do you have today's grid in front of you, Reed?
I do not.
Okay. So I'm just going to read to you guys off the top. This is good. This is like a good promo for what's coming at 2 o'clock.
That's the purpose of this segment.
And I think you guys, I know Adam always likes to take a look at the grid on
I
his way
do.
out the door. 2 o'clock, 2, semicolon, 0, 0. Actually, 2:00, 2:00. Black Monday for the Nashville Predators. Black Monday. It was awful. And I have to say, it was exhilarating television. I mean, I watched that and I'm like, now I see why people got into marble races during COVID.
I was
to bet on it,
hypnotized
because
by the floating balls, the floating ping
when they
pong
were doing
balls.
the second pick. I thought the presentation last night was great by ESPN for the most part. I felt like, they brought in those 3 kids. I didn't need to interview them, but that's fine. But they brought up the 3 top prospects so that if you are a novice, you can at least kind of follow along. Like, I'm sure that Lindsay, who was watching the draft lottery with me last night, had no idea who Michael Misa was, but at least she now can kind of keep up. I thought that it was quick enough. I mean, the idea of 30 seconds until the next ball. I thought that was probably maybe a little over the top.
Yes.
But the one thing that got me was I'm watching the numbers and it's the number comes up and then we had to wait 35 seconds while some guy filled out a card like it was freaking customs to hand it to the deputy commissioner. Who freaking won? Tell me, ESPN. So it was a painful night for Predators fans. It was one I was expecting, but it absolutely was painful. And the 5th overall pick historically it's not that it's a bad pick. It's just that it's not a good pick. And the Predators, for that godforsaken season that they just had, they needed a good pick last night.
They still may be able to get.
Well, let
get a
me
good
ask you this
pick,
question, Jared, because I did text
I
you
don't
this
think so,
yesterday. So I looked at 2 mock drafts that were released right after the draft lottery, one on Sportsnet and one at The Athletic. And both
Scott
of them
Wheeler.
both of them had the Predators taking James Higgins at 5th. If that were to happen, if he were to fall to 5th and the Predators take him at 5th, would you be happy with that?
I would call that the best of a bad situation. I guess that's probably, I wouldn't say that. The best of a bad situation is probably if they end up trading up to number 2 from Misa, which they might be able to do. People don't understand. This isn't the NFL. And I think that far too many people that like the NFL think the NHL draft is like the NFL draft. It's not. And teams usually do not trade the very high picks. If you want to win the cup, you have to have those players on your team. I mean, for instance, Barkov and Sam Reinhart in Florida, who just won the cup. Number 2 overall. Vegas has Jack Eichel. Now, they never picked that high, but they acquired Jack Eichel, who was number 2 overall. Colorado had Nathan McKinnon, who was number 1 overall. Tampa won 2 cups with Steven Stamkos at number 1 overall. I mean, Crosby and Ovechkin and those guys. Like, if you really want to win the cup, you've got to have a pick that's at the very, very top of the draft. And teams just do not trade those picks. Maybe there's a chance. I saw Scott Wheeler write about this at The Athletic, that maybe San Jose, who absolutely needs defense help, and they're probably not going to get the Schaefer kid at number 2. Maybe they'll make a deal to move back to number 5. It will cost you a boatload in order to be able to do it. That would be the best of a bad situation. Higgins falling to 5 is probably the second part of that. But I view Higgins as more of a second line guy than a true number 1 at 5'11". I don't see him as a McDavid type player, which again is what Misa may end up being. I mean, look at the numbers Misa's putting up in the OHL. And that was kind of the big hope that the Predators could land that. again, I think Hagen's at his size and his productivity, and he's still very young, but I think he, again, maybe more profiles towards that second line guy, that Travis Konechny type, than the front line guy. And the Predators, hate to say it, they need front line guys.
I'm always hesitant to do this, looking back at previous drafts and saying, well, these players were drafted in that spot. But looking at forwards historically, in recent history, who were drafted at number 5 overall. Elias Pettersson was a number 5 overall pick, has a 100-point season on his resume.
But can you win with Elias Pettersson?
Well, the Canucks certainly didn't do that this year. Elias Lindholm was a 5th overall pick. Braden,
what's he?
Elias Lindholm?
Yeah, what is he? First of all, it's Elias.
Elias.
But
Elias. I was talking about Elias Pettersson, Elias Lindholm.
what really is Elias Lindholm? I think, and I love Elias Lindholm's game, and he was a pain in the ass for the Predators last year in the playoffs. He's a second line center.
That's fair. I mean, Braden Shen was a 5th overall pick. Blake Wheeler was a 5th overall pick. You can find productive players, but I understand, to your point, are those the players that put you over the top to win the Stanley Cup? They're a part of it, but are they leading the charge? Probably not. I understand.
I'll ask you this question, Adam. Right now, who do you think is your favorite to win the Cup?
Ooh, that's a good question. My favorite to win the Cup. I mean, based on what they were able to do in the first round, despite having 2 major injuries, I like the Dallas Stars right now, to be honest with you. That's what my gut tells me.
And I would say that you're not going to say Winnipeg, because even though Winnipeg
Dallas would have to beat Winnipeg to get to where they're going.
I know, but like Winnipeg is a very, very well-built team. They're a well-coached team, and they've got the best goalie on the planet, albeit he stinks right now, but they have the best goalie on the planet. They won the President's Trophy this year, and I don't think anybody really thinks Winnipeg's going to win the Cup. And that's where I go back to, again, like if you're going to win the Cup, the team that I would take right now is Toronto. Like I thought the way that they played last night after Stellaris threw up all over the bench, and they really, for the most part in that game, dominated the Florida Panthers last night. I think that Toronto's got Matthews. Like there's Matthews, there's McDavid, there's Barkov, there's all these great players taken at the top of the draft. And in hockey, you have to get that player. And I just feel like it's an opportunity that the Predators missed out on.
Well, I mean, it wasn't their fault they missed out on it. I mean, but again,
I'm not blaming them.
But don't you believe because again, whoever comes in, more than likely they're not going to be a day one starter, even though you would love that. More than likely they are not going to be on the day one roster. But say if he is, coupled with the guys you already have on the team, shouldn't that be enough? Shouldn't that be enough to have you thinking, okay, but maybe your thought is they're bringing Coach Bruno back, so that's a negative. Even if it was a positive that you went and got the guy that you wanted, coupled with the guys that are already here. I just think if you add someone, whether he can play now or not, a lot of it hinges on how that unit that they had last year comes back.
Yeah, I don't care about if he plays next year or not. Again, when it comes to
so you're thinking
Cup,
down the line.
Yeah, it takes about 6 or 7 years before these guys start competing for the Cup. Okay. So, like Nathan McKinnon in 2013 wins the Cup in 22. Like that's what you're looking at for the Predators, and I just don't think they can do it without that kind of player.
Well, we'll hear what Jared has left to say. It's Black Monday, and it's Black. I guess it's Black Tuesday. Well, it was Black Monday, but he's going to talk about it on a Tuesday. Coming up next, that's Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Be love, people. Have a safe, blessed, wonderful Tuesday. Peace.